Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat. It's good to be with you in this digital space with the little fake fire over my shoulder. Through all of these Fireside Chats, I have depended on Judy Zarubik to make the technology flow smoothly, but I don't want to burn her out. I am so grateful to John and Mary Phillips, who have also done the tech for a number of these Fireside Chats and for Sunday worship. However, we are always looking for others who are willing to learn how to do the tech and to therefore lighten Judy's load. Give me a call to explore options. Thank you, Judy, for all that you do so well. Now that the government, provincial government that is, has announced our moving into phase 3 of reopening during this pandemic, after a year and a half of healthy safety protocols, we may feel worried about what that might mean. Once we hit phase 3, we may feel like it's post-apocalyptic time. Yet we also know that public health safety protocols are necessary since Grey Bruce has been declared a Delta variant hot zone. To keep people in line, that is when you need this kind of authority. Kind of looks like the look that I'd get from my mother. For some of us, we happily shelter at home. We have been staying safe inside for so long that even our technology has evolved a new understanding of reality. Now notice that she is knitting. Don't worry, for there are many balls of wool to supply any knitters. Some of us just venture out under the cover of darkness with surprising results. Staying at home means that we have also changed our shopping habits. When we do get out to get groceries, we can be surprised by sudden new insights. And to make life interesting, some have taken ordinary tasks and elevated them to an art. I must admit that this pandemic has provided me with an opportunity to ponder ever more deeply how we are called to live our lives in community. The increased isolation during the pandemic has emphasized the human need for one another. However, when we bump up against each other, we choose either to compete, to collaborate, or both. As a community of faith, I would claim that Jesus calls us to collaborate. However, the path to that collaboration often begins with competition. The art of collaboration isn't to decide which option wins. Instead, it is to listen to each other and to find the best solution for all of us, for our collective well-being. The point of having a society isn't to care for each other. If the point of having a society isn't to care for each other, to ease suffering and to realize each life's potential, literally, what is the point? To hoard wealth? To build empires on other people's throats? Like, life is brief. Nothing lasts. Wealth and empires are pointless violence. Here's an image of why. Yes, the circle of life is ironic at the least. If we don't approach life with a sense of humor, we might fall into despair. There are always different perspectives to consider. An example is this actual sign at a golf club in Scotland. 1, back straight, knees bent, feet to shoulder apart. 2, form a loose grip. 3, keep your head down. 4, avoid a quick backswing. 5, stay out of the water. 6, try not to hit anyone. 7, if you are taking too long, let others go ahead of you. 8, Don't stand directly in front of others. 9. Quiet, please, while others are preparing. Well done. Now flush the urinal, wash your hands, and go outside and tee off. You see, a sense of humor is essential in life, even in the most desperate circumstances. I know it's an old kind of joke about doctors' illegible writing. I do subscribe to a blog by church growth consultant Reverend Cameron Trimble. In one of her blogs, she wrote about a dear friend of hers, John, who had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. She wrote, he was enrolled in a cancer treatment trial and went through many rounds of infusions, tests, and scans. It was a roller coaster of terror and miracles, time gained and time lost. John and I had a chance to talk about how he was handling the ride. John told me, what I have learned is that life has always included death. I denied that for a long time, but now I understand that it's both life and death, sickness and health, weakness and strength, suffering and peace. It's both and, not either or. Once I accepted that, I stopped suffering. I was free to truly live, fully love, to find true peace. I don't want to die, but I am so glad that I learned how to live. I hope I can teach my kids that in my living and in my dying. He passed away 2 months after that conversation. She continued with his story. At his funeral, those of us who knew and loved John gathered in the sanctuary in Atlanta. We told stories of how he made us laugh, pranks he played, work he created, and how his beautiful life made ours so much better. We missed him to the core of our being. And then in the other room, a band started playing. The music got louder, and then suddenly a Mardi Gras band was playing all around us, wildly costumed and blaring their horns in celebration. We looked at each other, confused, but then we remembered. It's both and. Grief and celebration, heartbreak and hope. Good one, John, I thought. We need that reminder. Perhaps this is John's lesson. Yet for too many, we feel like this. I would strongly disagree with the fatalistic nature of this image. Yes, life throws us dismaying curves, seeming to flick us off the cliff into the abyss. However, I would suggest that it is God who catches us, comforts us, teaches us, heals us, and walks with us. Instead of taking on the role of victim, try former President Jimmy Carter's approach. I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I am, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have, to make a difference. Perhaps challenges and tragedy are opportunities to find joy. Joy is deeply vulnerable. We're afraid to lean into joy because something might rip it away and we'll get sucker punched by disappointment or pain. But there is a way to stay in joy. When we feel that quiver of vulnerability, instead of dress rehearsing tragedy and waiting for the other shoe to drop, let that shudder be a reminder to practice gratitude. Now, that requires us to seek a different perspective, the perspective of faith that loves the other person. When we perceive the other, let's be the one who fixes another person's crown without telling them it is crooked. This perspective of joy and gratitude means we learn to treasure our uniqueness and our diversity, working collaboratively with those around us. Notice in this simple yet profound illustration, with a little thoughtful perspective changing, we are all included in life's picture. When we help people, it does, as Jimmy Carter claims, make a difference. When the discussion turns to helping people, there's always someone who takes the most ungenerous, contemptible stand toward others. If by helping legitimate, needy people, I accidentally help some lazy people, so what? How is that worse than helping no one? Here's an ironic illustration of that insight. In the midst of the difficult work of loving one another, there is a reason cat and dog pictures on social media are so popular. They lift our spirits because we can see the power of relationship even between different species. They bring forth joy in our hearts where anger too often dwells. What about anger then? Consider this Buddhist parable. A monk decides to meditate alone. Away from his monastery, he takes a boat and goes to the middle of the lake, closes his eyes and begins to meditate. After a few hours of unperturbed silence, he suddenly feels the blow of another boat hitting his. With his eyes still closed, he feels his anger rising. And when he opens his eyes, he is ready to shout at the boatman who dared disturb his meditation. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that it was an empty boat, not tied up, floating in the middle of the lake. At that moment, the monk achieves self-realization and understands that anger is within him. It simply needs to hit an external object to provoke it. After that, whenever he meets someone who irritates or provokes his anger, he remembers the other person is just an empty boat. Anger is inside me. That is why we have an assurance of grace and a prayer of confession in our worship services. It offers a time to deal with what is breaking us from the inside. That is why we rely on and trust in God's forgiveness. We also need to forgive ourselves and others, just as the prayer Jesus taught us suggests. Consider this perspective on forgiveness.
I really believe that when someone else does us harm, we're connected to that mistreatment like a chain. Because forgiveness is nothing less than an act of fidelity to an evil combating campaign. So it's not an act of niceness. It's not being a doormat. It really, to me, is more badass than that. Maybe retaliation or holding on to anger about the harm done to me doesn't actually combat evil. Maybe it feeds it. Because in the end, if we're not careful, we can actually absorb the worst of our enemy and on some level, even start to become them. So what if forgiveness, rather than being like a pansy way of saying it's okay, is actually a way of wielding bolt cutters and snapping the chain that links us? Like it is saying, what you did was so not okay that I refuse to be connected to it anymore. Forgiveness is about being a freedom fighter. And free people are dangerous people. Free people aren't controlled by the past. Free people laugh more than others. Free people see beauty where others do not. Free people are not easily offended. Free people are unafraid to speak truth to stupid. Free people are not chained to resentments. That's worth fighting for. There really is a light that shines in the darkness, and that the darkness cannot, will not, shall not overcome it.
If, as Nadia Bolz-Weber says, freedom is our gift through the daring practice of forgiveness, then even in the tragedies of life, even through the challenges life hands us, God's healing presence is the bolt cutter for the brokenness others foist on us and for the brokenness within ourselves. When we are free, we laugh more, we see the irony more, we chuckle at the irony of life more freely. In their book, Active Hope, Macy and Chris Johnstone write, active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love, a readiness to discover the size and the strength of our hearts, our quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness of curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses, and our capacity to lead. None of these can be discovered in an armchair or without risk. Maybe then, discovering the strength within us and in others means we free ourselves to embrace the humor life hands us, to see the silliness. We'll go to the next slide. This wasn't the one for the silly. There we go. Laughing at changing norms for personal grooming, for example. Or frustrations that can arise when working from home with a cat. No matter how educated, talented, rich, or cool you believe you are, how you treat people ultimately tells all. Integrity is everything. Indeed, the biggest laughs usually occur when we consider our own foibles, failings, and follies. Integrity is noticing that all of us are vulnerable to making mistakes, to treating others with disrespect, to making huge assumptions which later prove terribly wrong, or thoughtlessly ignore the human need around us. In fact, to admit we get it wrong means we feel naked in front of a world we perceive is just waiting for us to trip and fall. However, living with a sense of humor can keep us humble in our vulnerability. Yeah, I can see myself finding that situation coming to life. Well, today has been full of ironic and funny stuff because, well, life is like that. Because we live life with the sense of humor, we enter into the both and nature of life. I'm going to share with you a video taken from the Canadian television morning show, Your Morning on CTV. Consider this a prayer of laughter and notice how it frees you and energizes you and brings you hope.
All right, as much of the world continues on in isolation, people working from home, they're trying to figure out things to do with their family, things to figure out how to pass the time. Yeah. Lindsay and Kels, a lot of teachers have been going online and coaches trying to help out their students and their athletes. This one teacher in particular, music teacher, I thought was phenomenal. Not only did she pick up an instrument and decide to help out her student and spread some joy, but she wrote a song, and as inspiration, she was going to share what she's been going through and how it makes her feel while she is in isolation. Have a look.
Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go.
That's awesome. That is.
I don't think that's
Not expecting that.
His veins, Lindsay and Kelsey, are literally popping out of his forehead.
I was not
That was
expecting
so
that at all.
unexpected. No, she looks so sweet and like
I
the
know.
little guitar
I know I'm a
thingy.
music
It's the
teacher,
quiet ones you gotta
and
watch
I
out
found
for.
that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online
Here it is
learning and
again,
teaching
everybody.
is to write a song. So I wrote a song.
It's a lovely little melody. She makes sure to show the proper chording and fingering to make sure the song is
yeah.
just right.
Look at her smile.
Sweet Mrs. Music Teacher, and this is how she feels. Sort of how we all feel. Okay, well, you compose yourself there.
Oh my
JP
God,
has
that
brought
is
you some Kleenex, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
And you know what? The reality is when we share laughter at what life hands us, it's infectious. So consider that an infectious prayer of laughter, hope, and irony. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Terry Boyd for all that he does in making sure these fireside chats are uploaded to our YouTube channel. Without his diligent and swift work, you wouldn't be able to watch. As we go from this digital space, may the laughing God carry you in arms of mirth. May the chuckling spirit bubble within your heart when you need it most. And may the grace of God open your giggles through healing and to hope. Until we see each other again next week, goodbye.